want to talk a little bit about, pardon me, that gospel reading this week. And Jesus is uh, talking with us in that reading about our relationships with other people, and particularly difficult times in relationships with other people. So that if you feel another member, another person has wronged you or committed an offense against you, um, what do we do within the context of Christian community? And so his directions in this is, you go and you try to talk to the person, and if that doesn't resolve it, you take two or three other people from the church with you, and he keeps sort of escalating it to then you tell it to the whole church if there's still no resolution in this fractured relationship between you and this other person. And then he says that if there is still no resolution and the other person is still not willing to, come around or compromise or any of that, then that person is now to you. You are to treat them as a tax collector and a Gentile. We have sometimes in the past used this particular text, and there are a couple of others like it, as a justification or a rationale for judging people, excluding people. There are still churches around or Christian communities around that practice things like shunning, so that if someone is in the view of the community, a notorious sinner or keep doing wrong things, they get shunned. My experience in the past in a parish I was in once that was dominated by that area was dominated by one of these groups that is very big on shunning people, and the inhumanity of that, the cruelty of that, that causes in people's lives is just ridiculous. Um, and so this is a text that has been used to justify that in the past. I'm always struck, though, um, by this text. If you think for a minute where the disciples have just been with Jesus, they've just been in Gentile territory, and they're making their way back to Jerusalem, and Jesus has said again about how, once we get to Jerusalem, things aren't going to go too well. It is in that Gentile territory they're coming from, Caesarea Philippi, that symbol of oppression and humiliation to the Jewish people. It's in that context where he said to them all, "Who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" So they've just come from there. And this story is in Matthew's gospel. Do you remember what Matthew used to do for a living before Jesus called him? Matthew was a tax collector. And so I just sort of picture, say this is Matthew and Jesus having a one-on-one conversation about this question about how do you treat those people who have wronged you. And Jesus is saying, in your mind, take your mind that it's Matthew who's asking the question. And they're all expecting, of course, Jesus to talk about rejection and things like that. That's the way we've interpreted this text historically. But Jesus says to Matthew, well, Matthew, treat those people just like how I would treat, say, a tax collector, Matthew. You see, I think this text is about us being encouraged, being told to always, always go the extra mile, go the extra 10 miles, go the extra 100 miles for other people. This text is saying to us that we Christian people must never, never, never write people off. Say of other people, well, I'm done with them. They're out of my life. Just writing people off. Jesus says to Matthew, with how do I deal with those difficult people, those people that get under my skin, those people of whom I do not approve, those people that I am 110% convinced of how wrong they are in everything that they are doing. Jesus says to Matthew, well, Matthew, treat those people kind of like how I treat tax collectors. Gentiles. Those Gentiles we were just with a few days ago up in the north. Treat them like that. And so this text is not, in my mind, a text about judging and excluding people and writing people off and and all of that sort of thing, casting people out of our lives. This text, it seems to me, is a text that says to us how far we have to go in chasing after reconciliation. So what does that have to do with us in our day-to-day lives? Well, you think about, for instance, all of these, the riots that are carrying on, and the burning and looting and murders, and all this stuff that's going on in our world right now with these, especially south of the border. And I look at some of those videos, and groups of rioters blocking traffic in streets and things like that. And some of the time, my knee-jerk, unkind, unchristian response is, oh, why don't we just push on the gas further and plow through? Why don't we just, like, how do we deal with this? The vehicle's bigger. Can't we just push a vehicle through the crowd? And why? How do we do this? And this text says, no, you don't write people off. You never write people off. That a much better long-term and longer-term strategy for human life, for this world, is that we hang in there with people. We behave toward and act toward those people that we believe are just wrong, or those people who have no interest in the church and no interest in Christianity, and those people, we don't write them off. We hang in there with them long term, and that is how lives are changed. And we hang in with those people long term because that's what Jesus has done with every one of us, hasn't he? Jesus hasn't abandoned any one of us. Jesus hasn't said to any one of us that, well, that's it, I'm done with you now. God help us if that ever happened. Jesus doesn't say that to any single one of us. He hangs in there with us. Those times when maybe we're the one that's down in the dirt, we're the one who's making a mess of things and not getting it right, and Jesus hangs in there with us. And as Christian people, our discipleship is about hanging in there with other people. And lest we ever think that it doesn't matter, in terms of encouragement and inciting us to hang in there longer, is he also says in this text, and I think it's about us needing to recognize the importance of freeing people from what binds them. He says to us that whatever we loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Whatever we bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And so it is up to us, the disciples of Jesus, to help people get free of those shackles that ensnare them and keep them down. Those shackles, the things that imprison us, are multitude in their number and multitude in their names. It could be things like low self-esteem, or beliefs that we're carrying forward, from childhood, or hurts and grudges and all of this stuff that we collect up as we live. And it's up to we Christian people to help others get free. I believe that when we look at some of the chaos in the world, the chaos is always about people not living the way God has intended us to live in relationship with one another. God intends us to be with one another compassionate, empathetic, loving, gentle. God doesn't write people off. God doesn't cast people out. We do that. We do it left, right, and center all through our lives. God doesn't do that. And as I said earlier, this text is saying to us that we Christian people must never write off other people. We have got to be the people who are agents of healing and wholeness and peace and light in the lives of the people around us. Amen.